Welcome to the OK Book Club, where we dive into books, stories, people, and tons of different topics. And yes, we've got another episode of History's Story, History Once Upon a Civilization. And today's episode is everything that led us up to the first civilizations, the first organized time, boys and girls, where men and women were able to develop a city, a little town alongside a river, and they stopped moving from place to place. So that happened about 5,000 years ago. But again, it's really important to understand the context, which is the past. What happened during that time? What led us up to those first civilizations? So once upon a time, we weren't around. There were dinosaurs roaming the planet, and they dominated everything. But then one day, something horrible happened. An asteroid from space came crashing down to Earth. And this, over a period of time, boys and girls, ended up destroying most of the life that was on the planet. The asteroid had created this huge plume of dust that circulated all around planet Earth. So the sun couldn't get through. And friends, when the sun couldn't get through, sun is what's responsible for life. Plants died out. The animals that fed on the plants died out. The animals that died out, therefore, allowed, tragically, the dinosaurs over many years to ultimately become extinct. And here's what we understand. The reason we understand this today, boys and girls, is fascinating. This is a theory from scientists. It's not absolutely facts, but they have good reason to believe that this is actually what occurred, because not too long ago, when I was in college in the 1980s in Mexico, scientists found a large concentration of iridium, which is a specific metal alloy that is only found in asteroids, not found on Earth. So this is where the theory came from. Whether or not it happened, boys and girls, we may never know, but certainly what we do know is that dinosaurs became extinct. And around this time, something also amazing started happening. Friends, look at today's map of the world. Look at South America, the eastern part of South America. If you were able to move South America right over to Africa, doesn't it look like it's going to fit perfectly like a puzzle? Well, it does fit almost perfectly. That's because, friends, our continents that we see today that are all separated were once one big landmass. It was one large continent right smack in the middle of our planet. They called this Pangaea. This landmass started breaking apart 200 million years ago. Up until about 50 million years ago, it was all separated with what we see today with all of our 11 continents. The good news, this asteroid, this big event, the continents breaking apart, did not destroy life. The dinosaurs didn't make it through, but friends, our birds today that are flying around in our yards are all descendant from those dinosaurs. And yes, some animals, plenty of them, survived. Crocodiles, lizards, sharks, tons of different plants and insects all ended up surviving. And here we are, millions and millions of years later, we arrive somewhere, scientists believe, about 300,000 years ago. And then something amazing happened. Men and women could see fire as a part of nature, but it had to have happened, boys and girls, at some point in time. Someone figured out, wow, this is so important. This is so amazing. This is so destructive and dangerous. What if we were able to control this fire that we see in nature? And this was a huge event, boys and girls. Men and women, they used fire. Think about it, right? They used it for light, so they could hunt better. They could hunt at night. They could see better at night. They could scare off predators. They could use it to find prey. They used it to keep warm. This planet was cold throughout a lot of this time period. That's why we called it the Ice Age. We also used the fire to cook meat from the animals that we killed. This allowed us to digest food easier. It released nutrients into our body, which enabled our brains to grow. This is a theory that scientists have thought about with us becoming so dominant on the planet. What else did fire do? Two other important areas. Well, while you were eating around the campfire, it allowed people to get together, get to know each other, right? And when you're communicating and you're talking, languages developed, writing developed. You used fire to carve out caves that provided us shelter. And friends, we know so much about this early period because we have found paintings inside these caves on the walls. And finally, what did fire do? Well, they had these basic ovens. They called them kilns. And over the years, what did they use these ovens for? They made pottery, right? From clay, heating up clay. The pottery was used to store everything, most importantly, food. A lot of the early food being grains that they could store throughout the years in case the food that they planted didn't end up harvesting, right? And certainly over the years, they used these kilns to shape stones into tools and then ultimately into weapons. To step back a little bit, what's important, boys and girls, to understand is scientists ultimately decided to break up these time periods into three distinct ages. The first being Stone Age. This was from 3 million years ago to about 5,000 years ago. Why? Because primarily we use stones for our tools and for our weapons. And then there was this earth material of copper and tin. And they realized when they mixed them together, they were able to make this strong material, even better than stone, which was called bronze. And this was basically around the first time that you have big civilizations that are existing, thriving. And this was from 3000 to about 1000 BC. And then we had the Iron Age, which was from about 1000 BC right up until 500 BC. Iron being even a lot stronger than bronze in terms of making everything, like I said, from tools to even more powerful weapons and certainly for buildings. But back to our story. Because this was a tough time, you had to move from place to place all over our planet, hunting animals, gathering food when you could. It was a tough life. Until one day, one of our early ancestors left scraps of food outside a cave. And along came a wolf, a gray wolf, and picked off of that food and came closer and closer and realized that, yeah, wow, you know what? This wolf was actually not that dangerous. And over time, this, my friends, was the domestication of dogs. Yes, early ancestors being the gray wolf. And what did this allow us to do. They are man's best friend, and it started right from the beginning. They helped us hunt. They protected us. They became our friends, and now it was a lot easier to hunt and gather. But it was still a hard life. And then, boys and girls, another huge event happened one morning. Someone, we don't know who, but this one person got rid of some extra seeds from a plant, threw them in the garbage, threw them away in one location. And what they noticed when they came back, months and months later, plants came out of the ground. Plants that provided food started growing. And they realized, wow, wait a minute. I'm going to try this again. And what this ended up doing, friends, is over tens of thousands of years, we figured out that we didn't have to move from place to place. We would just stay here, put seeds in the ground, wait for them to grow, to produce food for us, and now we could settle down in one place. This was a huge development for men and women. This was the beginning of civilizations. And where did they occur, boys and girls? They occurred along riversides. The first civilizations were in the Fertile Crescent, in today's area of Iraq, Iran, Israel, Syria. This became known as Mesopotamia, friends. Around the same time, in another location, in today's present country of India and Pakistan, another civilization ended up forming. And certainly in Egypt, the Egyptian civilization started forming. All these different civilizations, and another one, yes, in China, present-day China, all these civilizations had one thing in common, friends. They developed along rivers. Why rivers? Well, rivers, believe it or not, they flooded, right? Which was bad. You would think, why would you settle along a place where you could actually be in danger of passing away? Well, over many, many years, what they realized is that as the waters receded from these rivers, settling in the soil along the banks were minerals and nutrients that were perfect for growing food. So as these floods occurred predictably around this time period in these locations, men and women were able to control the flow of waters by digging ditches, which we called canals. We call them irrigation canals, friends. And the simplest way you can understand this is through levees, through dams, basically by stopping the water from flooding, controlling where the water went. They were able to bring it into the fields along the banks of the rivers where the soil was perfect, just enough, not too much, not too little, but controlling it through these areas so they were able to constantly have food every year, grow and harvest. These early civilizations developed along these major rivers, the first being Mesopotamia in the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. You had the Indus River in present-day India and Pakistan. You had the Yellow and Yangtze River in present-day China. And yes, you had the mighty Nile River in present-day Egypt. These early civilizations ended up thriving because if you think about it, boys and girls, once you had enough food, you were able to have people do other things. So they've developed these skills and other areas where certain people made tools, certain people made, yes, weapons, certain people made pottery, other people were weavers, other people were blacksmiths, right? Construction workers who built streets, homes, walls, everything that you can imagine. Bakers, shoemakers, and yes, artists who made everything from jewelry to paintings, you name it. And this was what ended up developing into something that was the next big moment. Boys and girls, when you would have extra of something in your own city, your own town, at the same time, you probably had something that you needed. So they built boats. They got in the water and they visited other civilizations. And they talked to each other, got to know each other, and ultimately, yes, they started trading. This ended up helping each individual civilization because now you were able to take what you didn't have and get it. And certainly what you had too much of, you were able to get rid of it. With this, societies grew. And one other important fact that I didn't mention, right? The population grew, right? More and more people were on our planet. Why? Because, think about it. Your husband and wife, you're moving all over the place. You know how difficult it is to take care of a child today? Well, they couldn't really have lots of kids moving from places to place. But now that they were settling down, didn't have to find their food, moving all over the planet, yes, more and more children were born, and so the population of all these civilizations grew. As these civilizations thrived, what ended up happening, friends, is that you needed someone in charge. You needed order. You needed people to get along. So ultimately, they called them chieftains, they called them pharaohs, they called them kings, basically rulers, right? That were in charge. And over the years, this, some cases became good, sometimes it wasn't good, but ultimately you also had the development of religions, like we talked about in our earlier episode, that tried to make sense of why certain things would be happening. And people had a reason to pray, people had a reason to have faith, and very often, along with the rulers, these important people that led the religions in each of these civilizations were priests and important members of every civilization. And we know this because many monuments were ended up being built, from the pyramids to temples throughout these individual cities and towns. And to wrap up our story, boys and girls, we weren't able to do this all by ourselves. There was something else that was really important. Somebody else helped us. And yes, this was because too often during all this time period, we were too cold, we were too hungry, and someone was stealing all their food. All the grain, all the oats, the barley, all of the food that we stored in these clay pots through the winter time in the ground. People noticed that something was stealing all of them. And you know what it was? It was vermin. It was mice. It was rats. You name it. So, who did we end up becoming friendly with? Yes, the cat. Our beloved little furry friends ended up helping us. And yes, we domesticated cats. Really wasn't the same, and certainly came along a lot later, friends, than domesticating our dog friends. But what did they do? They helped to kill every little mouse and rodent that was eating our food. And they, as you know, still today, they're very independent, right? They just kind of hung out with us, and we certainly realized that they helped in many ways. And what else? What other animals did we domesticate that ended up helping us? Sheep, right? Sheep, our early farmers ended up having lots of animals around the farm, and the sheep provided wool for us, which was perfect for clothes and keeping us warm. And we had the goats and the cows that not only we had for meat, but the cows and the ox. They ended up helping us pull these plows that they invented in China to make it easier to plant the seeds, to grow the food. And yes, all these animals provided milk, the goats and the cows, right? So between the goats, the cows, the ox, the pigs, all providing food, the sheep providing clothes, and yes, ultimately, their bones used for tools and weapons. So yes, along with our friends, the cats and the dogs, all these animals around the farm in civilizations helped us thrive. So as we wrap up this episode, friends, what we need to understand is as we go forward, and we will have future episodes on all these early civilizations and what made them unique, what made them different. We thrived, but there was something that was very sad that happened. And you can imagine this, right? Early civilizations, when they settled down, if they didn't have enough food, ultimately they would start trading and looking to other civilizations to help them out. But unfortunately, we see this still today. What ended up happening? Different people started arguing with different groups of people. And yes, the arguments ended up becoming fights, and the fights ended up becoming wars, all for lots of reasons. But early on, it was about survival. But to wrap up on a more positive note, what ended up happening through all these years is these civilizations came in contact with each other. And for the most part, what ended up developing is a system of languages on their own, a system of writing on their own, but through trading and getting to see each other, getting to know each other, different civilizations ended up understanding each other and getting along with each other, flourishing together. And yes, we ended up growing and thriving across the planet. But believe it or not, half of the planet didn't know each other. They didn't know each other existed. There was a huge ocean between millions and millions of people. That ocean was the Atlantic Ocean. And one day, one person knocked on the door of the King and Queen of Spain and said, "Hey, I can go and get your gold and silver for you a lot quicker." And this person's name was Christopher Columbus. But that's for a future episode. Friends, thanks for being with me on this second journey of History Story, History Once Upon a Civilization. Plenty of episodes to come. If you reach out to me at kevmok21@gmail.com with comments, questions, anything, I'll, with your permission, give you a shout out on a previous episode, along with anybody giving me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Much appreciated. Until next time, friends, enjoy and keep learning.